A lot of times they will push you to stay with an abuser, even if that person's abusing you mentally, emotionally, sometimes even physically. There's so much weight, judgment, expectation, and pieces that get put on you being a Christian and being in a toxic relationship. Many times I see people that are in a toxic relationship that are guilted and shamed into staying in an abusive relationship because it doesn't look good on the church. It doesn't look good inside the Christian organization. It doesn't look good for what the pastor, the people inside the organization want them to actually look like. When I first came out and I started to talk about my affairs and I started to talk about the things that happened, and after the first affair that I confessed, my wife and I, we went to a Christian counselor. The problem with going to this specific Christian counselor is how much he used all of what I said and how much I could manipulate the conversation to end up having my wife feel like she was the problem. We walked out of counseling with a Christian counselor, my wife feeling like she was the problem. Like if she had been a better wife, that I wouldn't have cheated. If she would have made the house more welcoming, more loving, more the environment better, then I wouldn't have cheated. If she had done different things to make it harder for me to cheat because I would have been so in love with her, then I wouldn't have cheated. There's so many things that are screwed up inside of a lot of religious culture talking about toxic relationships that one, they don't have a clue of what they're talking about, which is why I never recommend anyone to go with a narcissist to a Christian counselor because there's so much guilt and weight that gets put on you that it's your fault. There's so many times that you're guilted into staying in a relationship to give longer, like give more grace, give like maybe it'll work out, to keep forgiving over and over and over. Well, at the same time, they're ignoring the abuse that's actually happening to you. How many of you have been in a toxic relationship and you've been guilted and shamed to staying even longer because divorce isn't in the Bible or it's not a good thing or you can't do this? There's so many Christians that will force you and almost like put this like expectation, this weight, and this judgment upon you simply because you're in a toxic relationship and you're trying to get out. I've seen too many people that have stayed way too long inside of a toxic relationship. Like this piece leaves you stuck too long, too long. Many people do not realize that when you're in a toxic relationship, it breaks you down so much mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And oftentimes, when you're in a certain type of culture, you're going to get shamed for even trying to leave. There's a piece of me that didn't want to leave my wife early on simply because I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to look that way. I didn't want to have that like impression for my parents, for the church, for the religious structure I was in. There's also a piece of my wife who didn't want to have a divorce either because she didn't want to look like other people that she'd seen and been with in her past, of other people that had been divorced. She didn't want that piece to be on her. So it's just like this guilt and this shame that was on both of us that were like, well, we don't want to be those people. But then we ended up staying in the relationship longer simply because of the expectation. You have to understand there is too much stuff that's being put out there, like guilt and shame, keeping you in a toxic relationship. And the problem with this is the majority of times it's coming from people who have never experienced trauma and who have never experienced a toxic relationship. They're really just kind of blowing smoke up your ass simply because they're saying stuff and trying to communicate stuff that they have no idea of what they're dealing with. They have no idea what they're going through. Like they have no idea what's actually happening. And as a result, they continue to tell you really, really bad advice. Yes, there's pieces in the Bible about forgiveness, but that doesn't mean that you have to stay with that person. It doesn't mean that you have to continue having a relationship with someone. You can forgive and also let go. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean you still have to be with that person. But too many times people are like, well, you're going to hell. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. All of that is legalistic. There's warnings in the Bible about that being legalistic. This whole piece of being in a toxic relationship, Christianity, religious structure will keep you guilted and shamed inside of it. That's where I was. And that's where my wife was. But everything that I had been doing inside of our relationship was all because of me, all because of the shit that I was doing. The lying, the gaslighting, the cheating, the manipulating, all of that. I never even gave my marriage a chance. I wasn't willing to because I was too worried about my impression, how I looked, how I felt, what I got out of it. It wasn't until I started realizing the lack of honesty that I had to other people, but also to myself, that I was able to actually see my wife for who she actually is. I was able to change how I showed up. I was able to differentiate the stories that I had in my head versus reality. The lies that I was telling myself that were ridiculous, but I kept telling myself so that I would feel better about myself in the moment. Being able to shift all of this and show up in a different way offered me the opportunity to be able to shift my relationship so that it was no longer in this toxic direction. It was no longer a place where I was lying, cheating, abusing on her, but instead I was able to show up healthy, able to show up in a way that I could be honest, vulnerable, start to communicate my needs, my desires, start to communicate my feelings, my emotions, starting to be vulnerable, but also start to provide a safe place emotionally for her. In doing this, it spiked a huge jump in our relationship. The growth and the development that we've seen over the past couple of years has been massive. So much so that the past 2 Christmases have been the best Christmases we've ever had. And that's not just me saying it, it's my wife saying it. Where it's been amazing for us to be able to connect and have a great connection in time. Inside of this, there's a huge piece inside of our growth and development that all of it had to come down to this piece of me being honest. If there's not honesty, there's no opportunity for anyone to heal, to grow, to change, to develop. So if you're waiting for your narcissist to change and he's not honest, stop waiting. You're wasting your time. Because if he can't be honest, nothing's going to change. And if you can't be honest about your situation and realize that it's toxic, you'll continue to gaslight yourself into staying into a toxic relationship even longer than what you know you should. If you're in this place of confusion, frustration, like feeling all of the weight, maybe from the Christianity, religious side, from just peer pressure about staying in a toxic relationship, then I hope you get help. And I hope you get help with support from people who actually understand this. This is why everything that I do runs with communities, with people that get you connected to other people for accountability, for you helping to see that there is growth possible. Because if I can show you that growth is possible and you see it from other women that are growing, developing who they are, it massively opens up the door for you to be able to do the same as well. If you're interested in knowing more about this, then I invite you to go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough. There's a video there just to give you an idea of a little bit more about what I do, explain maybe more of your situation and see if it resonates. If it does, click on the application below on that page and move forward to be able to book a call. It's a free call for us to be able to talk and be able to see where you're at and if it's a possibility that I can help. Inside of this piece, I want you to understand if you feel the weight from Christianity, from religion, from shame, from guilt, from peer pressure, then I hope you reach out. Go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough today. Y'all have a blessed, wonderful day. We'll see y'all next time.